2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Hassenbemp Incorporated.
We're gonna do it. Give us any chance, we'll take it. Read us any rule, we'll break it. We're gonna make our dreams come true. Doing it our way.
How will you make it on your own? This world is awfully big. Girl, this time you're all alone. But it's time you started living. It's time.
Welcome to the 70s versus the 80s, my fellow retro pop culture loving babies.
You can have it down, why don't you take it?
And if you're the type of person every time you hear an Amazon package get dropped on your front step, you momentarily forget and you think it's a 1979 Sears Christmas catalog, then this is the podcast for you. This is Wolf Man Mike on the mic, and I can talk female-inspired 70s sitcoms all night. I can talk 80s sitcoms all night, but I can't talk new sitcoms all night because nobody really watches them anymore, do they? And as always, I am joined by the co-host with the most, reigning from parts unknown. He's pretty fly for a Bry guy, Brian. And in case you can't remember what Brian sounds like, he sounds a little something like this.
I'm the one that has to order the replacement foosball handle, so now I got to go make another order if you bent it.
All right, take it easy there, Brian. It was an honest mistake. Okay, folks, as you've probably guessed, today we are talking about 1970s and 1980s female-led or inspired sitcoms. So today we're going to have our first annual, what we're calling the Pretty City Awards, and our first ever award selection show for sitcoms. And then in our segment, People Who Died, fortunately we lost another great, the amazing Quincy Jones, so we're going to be talking about his great career.
Lost a dream or two.
All right, my children, this is a reminder the show does not work without you, so go on our show notes, click on the leave us a voicemail, or click on to leave us an email, or reach out to us on the socials. Just let us know what you're thinking about or what you want to hear us cover. All right, we got a busy show today, so let's get to it.
Go and show you growing, now you know about the facts of life. The facts of life. When the world never seems to be living up to your dreams.
So, Mike on the mic, we've been given a great honor. The 70s versus 80s podcast has been chosen to determine the awards for an upcoming episode of the Sitcom Awards, the Sitties, for female-dominated or female-led sitcoms of the 70s and 80s. So I thought it'd be nice for us to kind of give our listeners a little inside baseball, a little look. They can join us in the war room as the 70s versus 80s brings together all the voters for these awards. And I think podcast listeners should be able to listen in to this high-level decision-making that the 70s versus 80s has been allowed to do for this award show.
I agree, Brian. It'd be like letting the listener come in for one of our production meetings. Oh, yeah, I guess we never have production meetings.
Oh, yeah. Those are famously non-existent. So the Brinks truck arrived this morning, came through the main gate, had a police escort, and gave us an envelope. And these are the shows that are going to be part of this awards show. And then I'll also list off the awards. So the shows are the Mary Tyler Moore Show, which ran from September 19th of 1970 through March 19th of 1977.
You can have it down, why don't you take it? You might just make it.
Alice, which ran from August 31st, 1976 through March 19th of 1985.
Early to rise, early to bed, and in between I cooked and cleaned and went out of my head. Going through life with blinders on, it's tough to see. I had to get up, get out from under and look for
Maude, which ran from September 12th, 1972 through April 22nd, 1978.
She was a sister who really cooked. Isadora was the first bra burner. Ain't you glad she showed up?
Oh, yeah.
And when the country was falling apart, Betsy Ross got it all sewed up.
And then there's Maud.
And then there's Maud.
And then there's Maud.
And then there's Maud.
One Day at a Time, which ran from December 16th, 1975 through May 28th of 1984.
This is it, this is it. Straight ahead and rest assured, you can't be sure at all. So while you're here, enjoy the view. Keep on doing what you do. Hold on tight, we'll muddle through one day at a time.
Who's the Boss? Kind of spills over into the 90s, but we're close enough that we do a little 90s is 80s adjacent, so we can do that. Who's the Boss ran from September 20th,
Take a chance and face the wind.
1984 through April 25th, 1992.
Around the bend, there were times lost a dream or two.
Laverne and Shirley, which ran from January 27th of 1976 through May 10th of 1983, and the
Come true, doing it our way. There's nothing we won't try.
last show we're considering is The Facts of Life, which ran from August 24th of 1979 through May 7th of 1988.
You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have the facts of life.
Listeners at home that are screaming at your podcast device, the Golden Girls were omitted. I'm not sure why, but that's just this. We can only work with what we're given.
Yeah, the first thing I noticed is just shows were almost all like a decade. Just how long those shows ran. In my memory, they were all like 5-6 years, but those were all like 7, 8, 9, 10 years. It's just kind of surprising.
Had significant runs. So these are some good shows. That it makes sense that this was what the nominating committee gave to us, and so now I think we can use the main conference room here at the 70s versus 80s worldwide headquarters. So we're going to gather in the entire voting group. We spared no expense in gathering these people. Should we have the voters on this award show go ahead and introduce themselves, since we have the mics on for the podcast in the main conference room?
Yeah, let's do that, Brian.
All right. So we'll start at the foot of the, I guess if it's a big round table, like where the Knights of the Round Table, we can't say the foot, but I'll start. So I'm Spunky Comstock. I'm from the 70s versus 80s podcast, and I'm happy to be a member of the voting for this award show. I'll pass it to the person to my right.
This is Wolfman Mike on the mic, and I'm just happy to be here. I'm also from the 70s versus the 80s podcast. Who else do we have, Brian?
Okay, well, the person on your right, oh, it's a circle. It's me. Okay, we've got the gangs all here. So now we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna start debating these shows for these award categories and determine who should be the winner. So the first award category is the best female cast. So of the cast members that were female, which one had the strongest cast? So when you look at, say, One Day at a Time, when it has Bonnie Franklin, Mackenzie Phillips, Valerie Bertinelli, pretty strong cast there. They certainly should be considered for the winner. But then you look at Maude, that had B. Arthur and Rue McClanahan, Esther Roll, who goes on to bigger fame in another show. Certainly they could be considered. And then we have like Facts of Life with the main five, kind of Charlotte Rae, Lisa Wishel, Kim Fields, Mindy Cohn, Nancy McKeon. Kim Fields is a breakout star from that show. And then, of course, you can't leave out Mary Tyler Moore's show. Mary Tyler Moore, Betty White, Valerie Harper, Cloris Leachman, Gloria Engel. It's kind of the earliest of these shows, but that's certainly a strong cast. So how would you place your vote, or what are your thoughts on this, Mike?
This is very tough. I mean, you mentioned all the Mary Tyler Moore has all the big cast there. So this is best female cast. I know One Day at a Time, had Mackenzie Phillips, Valerie Bertinelli, Bonnie Franklin. That had a pretty strong cast there too. But I was leaning towards Facts of Life, just because when that show came out, I mean, believe it or not, it was supposed to be a Sweat Hogs, a Welcome Back Carter for females. I just remember the 4 characters, and I thought they played really well off each other.
Yes.
And you just had those 4 main characters plus Mrs. Garrett.
Charlotte Ray, yeah.
Yeah.
First season included like a young Molly Ringwald and some other characters, but they determined that it was just too hard to follow such a large amount, so they kind of cut it back down to 4. And I think that magic worked. That was a good show. So, all right. So the 70s versus 80s, the voting committee has agreed that the winner would be the Facts of Life for the best female cast.
She must think we're into nostalgia. She's still wearing flared jeans.
In a minute, you're gonna be wearing flared teeth.
Wait. Don't punch a total stranger. Introduce yourselves first.
Hi, I'm Natalie Green, and I wear flared jeans myself. In fact, all of my clothes are flared.
All right. Well, the next award that's going to be given out is the best overall cast. My argument would be with Mary Tyler Moore, you add in Ed Asner, Gavin MacLeod, and Ted Knight to the other strong cast. How can we beat that?
And as you mentioned, with the females, we had Valerie Harper, who would go on to have the Rhoda show. Cloris Leachman would go on to be famous, and then we barely spoke about Betty White, but Betty White would go on to be
Betty White's Betty White, right?
Yeah, Betty White's Betty White. Wow, did you know that? Wow, John Amos is credited with 14 episodes. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and he becomes famous for a show that we're gonna. I know I've peeked ahead, and there is going to be the next category. We're going to talk about spinoffs, and so we'll talk about that. But then you could look at something like Who's the Boss? That was it was a kind of a small cast, but it was a strong cast with Judith Light, Alyssa Milano, Tony Danza. Those ones being a strong. But I think when you just look at the depth of it, Mary Tyler Moore show might be the way to go.
I agree with you there, Brian.
All right. So that's the 70s versus 80s voting committee will determine that Mary Tyler Moore show awards the award for best overall cast.
What religion are you?
Mr. Grant, I don't quite know how to say this, but you're not allowed to ask that when someone's applying for a job. It's against the law.
Want to call a cop?
No.
Good. Would you think I was violating your civil rights if I asked if you're married?
Presbyterian.
So the next we have is the best spin-offs. So these shows did result in spin-offs. You touched base on it during the last discussion. There were 3 strong spin-offs from the Mary Tyler Moore show. Like you said, there was Rhoda with Valerie Harper. There was Phyllis, which I think had the Cloris Leachman. And then Lou Grant with Ed Asner. Lou Grant became a strong show as well. Alice had a spin-off with Flo when Polly Howland went off on her own and had a spin-off, but I don't think that stands up to Rhoda, Phyllis, and Lou Grant. You could say that Good Times spun off of Maude with Esther Roll kind of leaving to become part of Good Times. Was a fantastic show, but I don't know that matches up with the Mary Tyler Moore show. And I really didn't think there's really anything spun off of Facts of Life or Laverne and Shirley. I mean,
these shows are remarkable because spinoffs they were spinning in every direction. These days you can kind of watch the Disney Channel, maybe the Marvel. They kind of had all the Marvel shows that kind of show up on each other. But that's not the same. These shows were just spinning in every direction. Like Facts of Life was Charlotte Ray from Different Strokes, so that was kind of a spinoff from Different Strokes. Laverne and Shirley, of course, was in the 1950s Milwaukee. That was a spinoff from Happy Days. And, the Happy Days, they still had some of the characters who would come back on the Laverne and Shirley show every now and then. So these shows were just kind of spinning off. Every show was almost like a spinoff or created spinoffs. It was really an amazing time back then.
Yeah, we only had 3 major networks to fill up with the time, whereas now there's streaming platforms, there's still network TV, there's cable, there's deep cable, there's YouTube productions. We think that everything's being reinvented, but we certainly was having that, especially seems like in the early 70s, because you could say Maude spun out of All in the Family, spun off Good Times. Maybe this is the tough one to award. So my vote would go towards Mary Tyler Moore, though, because it had 3 quality spinoffs. But we can't count out, Maude coming out of All in the Family, of one of the all-time great shows, and spinning off Good Times. And like you said, Laverne and Shirley coming out of Happy Days, or Facts of Life with Charlotte Ray being in
I'll go with you. I was kind of leaning Laverne and Shirley just because they came. Cindy Williams, she was dating Ron Howard on, it started out where they were dating on a famous Happy Days episode where Laverne and Shirley showed up for the first time. Shirley Williams was dating Ron Howard on American Graffiti, so Happy Days kind of spun off from American Graffiti a little bit, and then, Laverne and Shirley spun off into Milwaukee the same, and, the characters would go back and forth because it was 1950s Milwaukee. But I agree with you, Brian. I think you had Mary Tyler Moore had the most spinoffs. I think that's what we should go with.
All right. Okay, Mary Tyler Moore will win the best spinoffs. Next was best comic relief character or characters, which first makes me think of Lenny and Squiggy from Laverne and Shirley, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did you see those guys?
Of course I saw him. I was looking at him.
Yeah.
You know what they look like? They look like gangsters.
Gangsters,
to me.
yeah.
Gangsters. You think they went in there to break Mr. DeFazio's legs?
And then I always thought that Pat Harrington as Schneider on One Day at a Time kind of played that role of a comic relief as the handyman.
Yeah, I kind of had Schneider. He was kind of the creepy handyman that was hanging around this divorced woman with her young daughters.
Yes.
He was very funny. If you take the creepiness out of it, he was very funny.
Single, divorce. When we look back at it, we're just saying that in the realm of the 70s, the creepiness wasn't as strong as if you look back now. The creepiness is really strong in that. But in the 70s, it was just kind of par for the course. I'm leaning that way. I mean, Ted Knight's comic relief was best in the movie Caddyshack, which we've discussed in a past episode. He was just kind of the person you love to hate on Mary Tyler Moore's show.
Yeah.
But I think we'll go with Pat Harrington as Schneider on One Day at a Time as the winner of that.
Oh, I think George Clooney on Facts of Life, we just totally forgot them. I'm just kidding. He was, I think he was on for one season and I think he actually had he didn't have gray hair back then. So if you ever want to see George Clooney without gray hair, just go back to Facts of Life.
He was young.
All right. What do we got next, Brian?
Next is the best female supporting actress. So we have the stars of these shows, and then there are the strong female supporting actresses, kind of like maybe the Valerie Harper, Cloris Leachman, Betty White in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, or, Beth Holland, Polly. The other two waitresses, Flo and Vera in Alice, would be kind of a supporting actress. Maybe you'd go with Mackenzie Phillips, Dolly Bertinelli in One Day at a Time.
Well, I went a different way with that. It's best female supporting actress, support. And when I think of support, I think of Adrienne Barbeau in Maude because she had those tight sweaters and she needed a lot of support. You know what I'm saying? So I went with Adrienne Barbeau, who kind of had that Dolly Parton feature to it.
Okay.
She would later go on to marry John Carpenter, so she'd be in Escape from New York.
Yes.
In a lot of those horror movies that John Carpenter was producing at the time. So when I think, I'm sorry, Brian, but when I think of support, I just think of support.
We're gonna let our adolescent minds go ahead and take this one and give it to Adrienne Barbeau of Maude for the best supporting actress. So then we have male supporting actor. We've already given one to Pat Harrington, so we don't have to go that way again.
I was thinking Ted Knight because, like you were saying, you just hated him so much on that show.
Ted.
Get out of my way, Mayor. I've got personality, too.
Ted, you don't.
He was just such a great actor. You just hated him so much. And, he would later go on to be in Caddyshack where you just kind of hated him, too. To have people hate you that much, it's just really incredible acting. Who else do you have that could go against Ted Knight?
Well,
there, Brent?
I agree with Ted Knight. You could go Vic Tayback from Alice, kind of being the Mel's Diner kind of thing, but maybe he would be more of a lead actor, so maybe we could skip him.
Mm-hmm.
And then really it was maybe Danny Pitaro, the kid in Who's the Boss. But I think Ted Knight's the way to go on this one. All right, so our best supporting actor goes to Ted Knight when he with his turn on the Mary Tyler Moore Show. So now we're going to get into more music stuff. We got two of them here. The first one is going to be the best theme song. And then maybe we could discuss these both at the same time. The best title sequence. Mary Tyler Moore has that famous title sequence that ends with her throwing their hat in the air. It's kind of the second best title sequence ever, according to some, you can get a poll that says something's the best of anything anywhere. I don't know that any of them would rate, but I really like the Laverne and Shirley one with the kind of that Yiddish hopscotch thing, the Shamil Shamazel Haus and Pfeffer Incorporated, or however it was said.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Schlemiel, Schlemazel, Haus and Pfeffer Incorporated.
I'm going to go with you. I like, for title sequence, I like Laverne and Shirley because they got that little Yiddish hopscotch thing. We get the blue collar life where they're, nobody else really shows this blue collar life where they're working at the brewery and they're sticking a glove on the bottles as they're
putting
just
bottle caps on,
watching bottles go by for hours and hours. I once worked at Coca-Cola and it was just like that for hours. You just watch bottles go by and by. So I really like that blue collar life that they showed there, the little Yiddish thing. Laverne and Shirley is a lot like the Monkees to me. I love the opening, like we said, the title sequence. I love the opening sequence. Could watch it a million times, and then as soon as the show starts, I'm like, whoa. And I'm kind of out once the show starts. But I really love the title sequence on it. And then, so best theme song, I'm going with Mary Tyler Moore. So that's it's very 70s sounding. I really love the song. And then in the 1980s, we haven't talked about this yet, a Minneapolis group, Husker Du, redid it, and I'll play a little bit of it here for you. I just love Bob Mold's. He goes with the grouchy voice here.
The husk brusque voice, yeah.
Yeah, gruff voice, and we'll play a little bit of it here. It just sounds very different than the 70s version. So, I mean, I just really love that. I'm going for Mary Tyler Moore for best song.
All right.
I think Laverne and Shirley for best title. Do you agree with me, or do you got some others?
So I'll go with you, kind of almost like an upset of the Mary Tyler Moore opening sequence with having the Laverne and Shirley title sequence be the winner. I like that. Best theme song, I kind of like the One Day at a Time. It was these songs would play and you'd be like, oh, that's the show's on, and you'd leave playing with your Hot Wheels or your Fisher Price Little People to go watch One Day at a Time. Or Facts of Life is You Take the Good, You Take the Bad. That was a iconic theme song.
Yeah.
But with like you said, with that Minneapolis, kind of that Minneapolis, what was it, like 80s retro punk or whatever you'd call Husker Du.
Yeah.
Redoing it, and it was a wonderful theme song and kind of really broke us into the 70s. So I'm on board with that. Well, Mary Tyler Moore for the best theme song and Laverne and Shirley for the best title sequence.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's kind of fun though. These, like we said, Who's the Boss went from 84 to 92. Music had changed so much. In the first year, if you listen to the theme song, it sounds way different. They put way more production in it towards the last year. So it's kind of fun to go through these title sequences. And in those days, they would actually have them change throughout the seasons quite often. So it's really something to go into YouTube and kind of look up when you have free time.
Absolutely. All right. I like that. So we have 3 more awards to give out. We have Best Actor. And for me, I would lead towards Ed Asner in the Mary Tyler Moore Show. But Tony Danza in Who's the Boss would be a strong candidate too, because he played that, kind of the rough and tumble wherever he was from, Brooklyn.
I think he's supposed
Brooklyn
to be a former
Philly
baseball player from Brooklyn because he was really a former boxer from Brooklyn. Yeah.
Right. Because in Taxi. So he's typecast as just being from Brooklyn.
Well, he actually had some fights. He was a boxer, actually. Yeah.
I think he played that, though, that being kind of that fish out of water in that era of being the male housekeeper and not even in a relationship, but just kind of taking that role and kind of being sensitive and nurturing kids while also being the tough guy was well done. But Ed Asner was Ed Asner, right? And had his own spin-off for the role he played in Mary Tyler Moore.
What the hell's wrong with you anyway?
Yeah, the only one I would add, we kind of talked about him before, was Vic Tayback, because he was just such a strong male presence in this otherwise all-female cast. He played Mel and Alice, the grouchy boss.
That's a strong one too. Absolutely.
But I'll let you go. I think you made a stronger case for yours.
Well, I okay, then based on the fact that they spun off a whole series for him, we'll go with Ed Asner from Mary Tyler Moore, with honorable mentions to Tony Danza and Vic Tayback. All right, now, Best Actress. So we have some fantastic lead actresses in here with Mary Tyler Moore, Linda Lavin, B. Arthur, Bonnie Franklin, Judith Light, either Penny Marshall or Cindy Williams, and then like Charlotte Rae for Facts of Life. All of them have a very strong, very versatile, good at their craft actress. And which one of these shows would we give, or which one of these fine actresses would we give Best Actress?
B. Arthur, I'd like to give her a special category because I think she looked younger in Golden Girls than she did in Maude. I think she aged backwards. Little Benjamin Buttons going there.
Buttons thing, okay.
Should we do a Forever Young to see how old she was?
Yes.
I got to look it up here. Hang on.
Okay, you look it up and I'll try to guess. So B. Arthur, been in All in the Family as a little bit of a foil for Archie. And I know she recently passed. I'm going to say she was, in September of 1972, she was 39 years old.
She was born in 1922. Wow, she was born 104 years ago.
She'd been 50.
She would have been 50, which I still think she looks way older than that. I mean...
Oh, after two where I was within a year or two, now I go 11 years off.
I was just saying she should get a special unannounced award earlier in the show for aging backwards. But I'm we got a lot of great female actresses there. But I think Mary Tyler Moore kind of started it. She was on the Dick Van Dyke Show to start out.
Yeah.
And then she was in the Mary Tyler Moore Show, kind of started the female independent of the 70s, started in 1970 to 77. So
on board.
I'm going with her. Do you have anybody that you think can contest against her?
No, I think what you brought up, her being kind of like the pioneer and kind of maybe opening paths for all these other shows.
I was going to say one of Linda Lavin from Alice. Again, we're talking spinoffs. She was first in Barney Miller, where she played the female cop, and she wasn't on that many episodes. She was just on randomly, but whenever she was on, she was amazing. That was an amazing character. And then they didn't really spin her off, but they gave her own show, Alice. She was good in Alice. I don't think she ever lived up to that Barney Miller. She just had such a good role in that show. I really loved her there, so I'll give her points there. I just wanted to mention that because she was such a strong character.
Yeah, I think she got overplayed by Flo with the Kiss My Grits. That kind of came the catchphrase and overshadowed her like lead in that show.
Yeah, Alice was a show. It took place in Phoenix, which was a big deal because Phoenix was not allowed to be a city until air conditioning was invented. So I think it was famous for being in the movie Psycho. And then, 10 years later, we start this Alice. It was kind of famous for that. Like we said, it ran the only thing I want to say about Alice, it ran from 76 to 85.
It had over 200 episodes.
And towards the end there, they had the famous trope where they had the robot waitress. It was a show about three waitresses. They got a robot waitress, and at first she was amazing. Nobody could beat her. And then the robot went evil, which was a very 70s and 80s trope where you had the evil robot that was amazing at first, and everyone's like, what are we going to do? It's amazing. And then towards the end, it would go evil.
Well,
so, that might have been the worst TV episode I've ever seen. So,
so we're going with Mary Tyler Moore for the Best Actress. And so the last one, we're going to close out, of course, with Best Series. These are all iconic series. They all had great runs. Mary Tyler Moore Show had 168 episodes. The Alice had 202 episodes. Maude had 141 episodes. One Day at a Time had 209 episodes. Who's the Boss? 196. Laverne and Shirley 198. And Facts of Life had 201. So they all had at least 140 episodes. So like you said, these were long-lasting, a part of the American landscape. So far, the Mary Tyler Moore Show is kind of what has won the most awards. I would lean towards it with the three spinoffs, with the kind of the groundbreakingness of it, the pioneering spirit of it, opening the door for all these other shows. And then My second one, maybe Facts of Life, just because it was a great ensemble female cast, younger than the newsroom and the tropes that had, where this was younger, like more of a coming of age stuff, where this was making your way in the world kind of thing.
Yeah, I loved Facts of Life. I don't think that one ever had a quality drop off. Like they said, they'd introduced the new George Clooney's. They kind of added the new characters as it went on. It never got bad. I thought Lisa Winchell, Blair was supposed to be this character that rubbed you the wrong way. I just because she was supposed to be the rich girl that thought everything about herself, but I just loved her.
Yeah.
I loved how she played off Nancy McKeon, who kind of played the rough and tumble girl.
That's right.
And then we were talking about spinoffs, but it's just such a small world. So Nancy McKeon was in Facts of Life. Her brother was in Alice. Philip McKeon played the little son in Alice. He ended up dying at a pretty young age. He died a couple years ago, so he was still pretty young.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, they were brother and sister. We didn't mention, just had to mention that there. You know what? I'm going to 100% agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. That's kind of what I was leaning to. Mary Tyler Moore was kind of the most iconic of these shows that started them out. And then Facts of Life was just a way better show than it had any right to be. So, Facts of Life had Kim Fields, and she's, we're talking about how all these shows are kind of tied together. Kim Fields' mother, Chip Fields, I kind of like that name.
I had an Aunt Chippy, which was like a nickname, so that's kind of interesting.
Oh, wow. So we talked about this on a previous episode, but Kim Fields, her mother was Chip Fields. I really love that name. She was in Good Times. She played Janet Jackson's abusive mother, which was really an iconic episode. So then Kim Fields and Janet Jackson were in Different Strokes together, where they both kind of played different girlfriends for Todd Bridges. And then Kim Fields went on to be in Facts of Life. So it's just amazing how all these characters tie together. That's just another tie-in we had with Kim Fields. She has a lot of tie-ins with these 70s and 80s shows.
Yeah, first time we've talked fully about a show she's been on. All right, so we'll seal these in the envelope, and we'll have them send the Brinks truck back out to take it to wherever they're filming the awards show. I think it's going to be on Deep Cable, the same network that the iconic commercial characters, the Ickies, were on. And you, the listener, now that you kind of got to listen in, tell us where we're right, tell us where we're wrong. If you have different take, maybe your memories, what your favorite comic relief characters were, and let us know. So listeners would have just had a chance to listen in the Sitties award show that was granted to the 70s versus 80s podcast to put together the voting panel. We talked about theme songs. We had New York Times bestselling author Alan Paul on an episode last year talk about his book, Brothers and Sisters, about the Allman Brothers album from 1973. He made a Facebook post, which I thought really kind of wraps up what I think. This is theme song related. And it's about the late, great Quincy Jones. Alan Paul posted, Quincy Jones was a genius. That's a well-established fact. From Sinatra to MJ, from Ray Charles to We Are the World. But don't ever, ever sleep on the Sanford and Son theme song, which when we had a theme song fantasy draft, I took that as my number one pick. Sanford and Son, by far, in my opinion, the greatest TV theme song of all time, written by the great Quincy Jones, who we lost this past week.
I never knew the name of it. I always called it the Sanford and Son theme song. It's called The Street Beater from 1972. It's got, all the gritty harmonica, sax, electric keyboard, shakers, and cowbell. I mean, it just sounds like it's being played in a junkyard.
It is. And it's
junkyard instruments. It's just perfect.
It's perfect. It fits that show, fits that time period. It was a fantastic theme song. You can go back to the episode about when we fantasy draft TV theme songs to see what other lowly theme songs were chosen, but none of them, in my opinion, match up to, I guess, The Street Beater by Quincy Jones, the theme song for Sanford and Son. So let's talk a little bit about Quincy Jones and kind of pay homage to him the way the 70s versus 80s podcast does with these music titans that are now passing.
Yeah, let's do it. I mean, like you said, his career went so far, from Frank Sinatra and then Ray Charles and then Michael Jackson. Nobody else has that resume. He's one unto himself, that's for sure.
I know that I recently listened to a podcast that had his daughter, Rashida Jones, on, and she was trying to make a kind of like I don't know if it's a documentary about his life. That'd be something that'll be, hopefully comes out, and it would be a great watch, especially when it's made by someone who was going to treat it with respect and kind of that the gravity that it desires. You don't want to make a family member look bad, usually.
That would be awesome if it comes out. So Quincy Jones, he first worked with Michael Jackson on The Wiz, and then he produced what I feel is Michael Jackson's two best songs, Don't Stop Till You Get Enough on Off the Wall in 1979, when Michael Jackson was only 20 years old. So you got to feel that Quincy Jones did a lot of the production. He would have to be a leader on that song.
Mentor.
Yep. And then in 1982, he did Billie Jean, which might be the iconic Michael Jackson. It's hard to pick the iconic Michael Jackson song, but
Billie Jean's certainly in the conversation.
Yes, for sure. So I think those were his best two songs of Michael Jackson.
Yeah, that's, a great producer, someone who can, it's like a great sculptor, or that can see the end result while you're just kind of putting the pieces together and shape it and take it that way, which makes this music great. I think they're underappreciated in our pop culture. The singers and the bands and the guitar players and who's the greatest singer of all time. But this magic happens a lot because of the producer. They're like the offensive linemen of a football team. They're what makes everything go, but they are completely underappreciated.
Yeah, everybody knows who Quincy Jones is, and he's a producer, which just doesn't happen. Nobody knows who producers are typically. I mean, there's Rick Rubin we'll talk about in some future episodes, but typically you don't know producers that much. So just the fact that everybody knows his name,
right,
an homage to how big he was.
Yeah, exactly. When a producer gets well known, then you know that they're fantastic. I mean, it's tougher for them to get well known than like a director or something like that. Yeah, we could talk producers because I think if like almost do like the best producers of the 70s and 80s era, and the era leading up to it, because there's a few that are, I feel, that were fantastic, are kind of overlooked. That might be a future, B or C segment for a future podcast. But yeah, we lost Quincy Jones. Longtime listeners of the podcast will know two things. One is that ever since I came on, we talk about the Allman Brothers a lot more. And two, we don't talk about the Grateful Dead. Not that I don't like the Grateful Dead. I enjoy the Grateful Dead. I've just never fully got into it. There's just not enough time in the day to do a deep dive, like say on the Allman Brothers, and then also do that same deep dive into the Grateful Dead, or building a relationship or having a great work career. There's just not enough time. So I chose to do the deep dive and become a huge Allman Brothers fan. But Phil Lesh was kind of the similar vein of Quincy Jones, where his bass playing kind of revolutionized the way bass players would play from starting in the late 60s when the Grateful Dead burst on the scene. The Grateful Dead obviously have their dedicated fans, so they were doing something right. And he also passed away this past week or so. And so, do you have any like favorite Grateful Dead songs? I mean, we're not Deadheads by any stretch of the mean, but are there any of them that kind of speak out to you? Or is that one of those things where, the Grateful Dead's on, it's an interesting song, but you don't even pay enough to look up like what the name of it was? I think I bought, like, in my heyday when we actually bought CDs, I had one Grateful Dead CDs, like Skeletons from the Closet, kind of a mishmash from different albums. There's a couple songs on there, and then
I mean, I know they're the Touch of Grey that kind of came out in the 90s, is kind of way after their hit songs, and kind of went on to be their biggest MTV type song.
Yeah.
Music video. And that was way after, kind of after their heyday. It was kind of nice to see them make that comeback like that.
Draw the curtains, I don't care, 'cause it's all right. I will get by.
They do have like some amazing songs, like I always forget what the train song's called even.
Quincy Jones, driving that train high on cocaine. Yep.
Iconic. like you said, I'm not a Deadhead. Neither one of us is. But when I think of that band, I think of the Deadheads. You know, the followers. They're probably the band that has the most famous following.
Yes.
You know, Jimmy Buffett had the Parrot Heads. There's some, and then Fish has whatever Fish has. Fish is another group I don't follow. But yeah, so you think of their fans as being the most loyal.
Yes.
I think of my cousin Gary, who was a Deadhead. You know, they were just the most famous, most loyal fans that they even had a nickname with them.
Yeah, and the first one to kind of that the nickname and have people follow them from show to show. Going back to the episode that we talked with Alan Paul, the New York Times bestseller, they kind of really also revolutionized the way that you hear sound at concerts, and that a lot of the modern day concert sound and how they produced it can be traced back to inventions by the Grateful Dead sound crew.
Yeah, they put on their sound crew put on the Watkins Glens Festival, which was the biggest attended one-day festival ever, where they think like 10% of the American population was at it at the time. And I mean, it was just huge. And what they reading Aaron Paul's book, and I listened to a few podcasts about it that day, was just amazing. And the fact that they pulled it off and it was successful, that was mostly to the Grateful Dead's road crew that did it. Yeah.
Dead sound crew. Yep. To get to have 600,000 people be able to hear a show is a testament to the sound crew. So Grateful Dead were innovators. Think of them, like you said, mainly for their following, but we kind of understand why there's a following when they're being innovative in their field and doing things that hadn't been done or kind of inventing their own way. And so we've lost the titan of that group and of the music industry. So we had the Quincy Jones and Phil Lesh. 70s and 80s give their, thank you for all your service to extending entertainment in our 70s and 80s decade.
Yeah, kind of fitting that we have the Grateful Dead in the People Who Died segment.
Yes.
Two more friends of mine, two more friends that died. Those are people who 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 died. They were all my friends and they died. She told me her name was Billie Jean as she caused a scene. Then heavy hair turned with the ice to dream of being the one who would dance on the floor and around.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the 70s versus the 80s, my fellow babies. I would like to thank Brian Malika for producing this episode. Brian, of course, produced this episode as he was running for re-election in the Mindy Cohen fan club president, and he won for the 36th year in a row. He's run the last 34 unopposed. I had to drop out, of course, because I didn't have enough time because I'm the president of the Tina Yothers fan club. Sorry, Brian, I was running back from the bathroom and somebody left the handles out on the foosball table again. And
I'm the one that has to order the replacement foosball handle, so now I got to go make another order if you bent it.